I love it when the first thing I see is the countdown. There's no prelude. We're diving right into this thing.
Jumping
We are
in.
ready to go.
Yeah. I don't like to give anybody any advance notice of what
No,
I'm going to
no, no, no.
bombard them with.
First thing I see, I don't even get a smile, no wink, no how you doing, no eye contact. I see 5, 4, 3. It's good.
Show's
I'm
on.
ready. I'm ready. Show's on.
Actually, it's not yet, but we'll,
Okay. I was on.
all right. Well, then we'll just use this. Okay. So we're already on. So we are in the middle of Mark drinking a liquid death can top to bottom here on the Property Management Success Podcast. Hashtag not sponsored.
Hey, did you, in any of your ultra running, did you ever, I mean, I'm sure you had friends and coaches and stuff that were like brand affiliates and like, did you ever get any offers?
I was actually, yeah, I was a brand ambassador for,
Brand ambassador, not affiliate, brand
yeah,
ambassador.
yeah, for Ultraspire. They make packs and headlamps, waist
Oh, I've
lamps.
seen those. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know
So
what's
you,
weird is like none of my friends in Arizona run with Ultra Aspire packs. And the first time I saw those was like Halloween 100 when I was running the race, and I was like, all these people have Ultra Aspire. It's like I wonder if it's like a regional thing. Anyway, nobody's going to care about this conversation, so we should move on.
all right, let's recut. Welcome back a second time for the Property Management Success Podcast with the Property Management Aid Station here with Mark Brower, Tony Cline. Mark, how's it going?
It's going well, man.
Good. Let's reenact the liquid death. You drinking the can top to bottom. I think you. Oh, there you go. Okay, top to bottom. Spin the label so we can see it. There you go. Hashtag not sponsored, but
Sponsor.
Mark is being sponsored by many things lately.
Really?
Are you? Are you not? You're traveling the world like you're some sort of celebrity now.
Really? I went to southern states.
That's it.
It just feels like I'm all over the place.
I
I
see you
was.
everywhere.
You do?
Yeah.
I'm in your head. I was on a webinar this morning with Jenny Utz, and we were talking with Andrew Smallwood, Second Nature Leadership Exchange. That was kind of fun. Talking about asset management, next generation of the property management company design, where we just go deep with clients. We harvest those diamonds under our feet instead of constantly looking over the bridge at the greener grass over there. It's like, nope, it's right here. It's right under us.
So I saw, or you saw that I posted a comment on that announcement for that webinar. And this wasn't a topic I was planning on talking about, but I want to hit this a little bit because you and I are just you're wanting to dig deep into the ground that you're already standing on, looking for something. You want to dig deep to see what else you can uncover. And I think that can work for some people if they know who their what I call that target client profile is. If you know who they are. And I think people who focus specifically on investors or people who can become investors, there's something to uncover there. But I still hold to the belief that a majority of the people that own single family rentals are accidental landlords, or I think there's another category where they're in the investment space, but they're really looking at one or two properties, and that's it.
I want my hair to look wild like yours does right now.
I saw you working on it. You need a. I mean, this takes, buddy. This don't just happen by accident.
You have curated that hair. You have curated that hair over time. Yeah, this is. I just went from lockdown gel mode to free flowing mode like Tony, but I'm a 2 out of 10. He's like a 9 out of 10. It's just
A
not
nine.
happening.
I'll take it.
Okay, you're saying that most people don't have a client base that really cares about wealth building, asset management. Like you have to know your client, give the people what they want, quit trying to like create a new category and force it down people's throats. Is that what you're telling me?
Pretty much what I'm trying to tell you. I'm telling you, there is an opportunity for people to dive deep with their clients and see if we can take somebody that owns one or two properties, figure out how to be an asset manager for them, and dig deeper into how can I help this person become a true investor, where we build out their portfolio over time, we create a plan for them, we become their, in a sense, financial advisor on the real estate side to help them create wealth at a much bigger scale.
Okay.
I still think there are people out there, the majority of people out there, the clients are just people who I'm in a relationship. We both decide to move in together. We got this extra house. And now what are we going to do with that extra house? Let's rent it. because going through the sale is too much work. And plus, what if we don't work out? That's in the back of their mind. But
Okay.
that's where
So
we're
they're
at.
just short-term minded. Quit trying to force them to think long-term. Quit trying to like adapt them into your model. Okay. So I have a couple of thoughts. Are we talking about this? You said you didn't want to talk about this.
Well, it
We're
wasn't
talking.
one of the things, but if you want to argue with me on it, I'm ready to go.
Hey, where'd you get those sunglasses?
I got them from a good friend of mine. His name's Mark Brower. I don't know where he got them from. I think he stole them from Squirrel's Nut Butter. Hashtag not sponsored.
For anybody listening to audio, Tony and I just put our sunglasses on. We're both wearing Gooder sunglasses. And this is appropriate because this is what you would see at an aid station if you were on an Ultra. And that's what we're doing here. This is the property manager aid station. Tony's wearing some Gooders, Goodr. These are the no bounce, cheap, polarized running sunglasses.
I'd prefer inexpensive. I don't do anything cheap.
Thank you.
Cost
Thank you.
effective,
No. Let's call it high value.
high
High
value.
value sunglasses. And I bought Tony. Was kind enough to invite me to go to this Grand Canyon thing 2 weeks ago, which was life changing,
We're gonna hit
amazing.
that.
What's that?
We're gonna hit that. Don't give it
Okay, we're
away
gonna
yet.
hit that.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna
so
circle back around to that.
I was thinking of my friend Tony, and I bought him those sunglasses, and I gave them to him before we hiked the Grand Canyon. Did you wear those through the canyon?
No, man, they're too pretty. I wanted to keep them in good condition.
Okay.
I wore my other ones that are all scratched up
Yeah.
and nasty.
My sunglasses, the ones I'm wearing, these Gooders, are actually Javelina 100 specific to this race that you see up behind me. That's me at the Javelina 100. So these sunglasses, anyway, super special. Love these sunglasses. I almost don't want to wear them because, I don't want them to get ruined. But then if you don't wear them, it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like kind of
Yeah,
catch. Yeah. You can't, you gotta use your nice stuff, right?
I
That's
didn't
like,
realize how good I look in these. I probably should have worn them at the canyon.
yeah, you look
I'm gonna
really
be
good.
next time you see me. I'm gonna be wearing these. They're sexy, pink.
Don't take them off.
Yeah.
So, okay, I have a question for you.
All right.
You're saying like, all right, well, most of our clients just aren't in the asset management mindset. They're not, intentional investors. They just have a short-term problem. You're the partner to help them get through that problem and keep their stress level manageable while you do that. And it is what it is. Quit trying to make this harder than it needs to be. You can't 10x all of your clients. Not everybody's signing up for that. I agree. So here's my question back to you. Is there a certain percentage of my clients that have to be open to a wealth builder program for it to be viable or like a good idea for me to build this out? Is that what you're suggesting? And if so, what is that percentage? Is it 10%, 20%, 50%? Like, am I wasting my time? Am I wasting my time building out a wealth builder program and thinking like an asset manager if only 3 of my 500 clients say, I'm on board, game on, I want to get to 10 properties under management, let's do this? Like, what kind of economies of scale are you suggesting I need to have to make this like a worthwhile pursuit, Mr. Tony Klein?
Okay, let's come back to let's back into this answer. So the first thing that I would say is as I'm coaching with my clients, and we've talked about this in the past, every time you introduce a new variable, you don't just double how difficult something is or the number of options. You exponentially create additional options. And so what I do with my clients is I try to teach them to create something that is streamlined as possible. And then we don't provide exceptions, we provide options. An exception is sort of a one-off thing that just sort of happens. So if you have one of your clients wants to be in the wealth building business, portfolio building business, and you say, I'm gonna focus on that. I'm gonna create a program around that. You have just created an exception. Now, what I said earlier was we create options. So an option is built into our system. So when we onboard them, if this was something you wanted to pursue, we would ask them a series of questions that puts them into one of two pipelines, essentially. That we know they are either an accidental landlord or just somebody that is just comfortable with their one or two properties, or they're in this other pipeline of I'm going to work with Mark and we're going to add a property a year for 10 years. And then in 5 more years, I'm going to retire and live off that income or whatever that is. But every time we provide an exception, we screw up our entire team because we don't have systems and programs for that. So what I would say to you to answer your question is in order to back into, are you wasting your time building this out, building this wealth builder program? I would say, how much time is it taking for you to build that, that's taking away from you providing services to everybody else in your portfolio? And then are you able to create a system around that? Because if you're creating one-offs, then I think it's a huge mistake. If you can create a platform where we're taking people through a similar series of steps, educating them, creating content, a class, a course, whatever it is, and then getting them on board, charging them a fee to be a part of that program so that now they're invested, they're going to give you the attention that it deserves. Yeah, then maybe. But even at that, I'd say if it's not 10%, I don't know if I'd do it. Because 10% of your portfolio, each adding one property a year, if you have 500 doors, 10% is 50 doors, you're adding 50 doors a year. Are you able to add 50 doors a year by redirecting that effort into a bigger pool of clientele or potential clientele?
No, you're not. Most property management companies are already managed by accident when it comes to long-term client outcomes. So wealth builder programs are ways to standardize a better future, not by over customizing for everyone, but by creating lanes for clients who are serious about growth. When it's done right, it can bring fewer exceptions because it aligns incentives, clarifies client fit, makes proactive planning the norm instead of reactive fire drills. That was all ChatGPT. I don't really believe all that.
I saw
But
you typing away.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like,
But here's
where's your
but
M
here,
dash?
here's
You like to
here,
include the little M dashes in, your stuff that you steal from
that's
Chat
right.
GPT.
Actually, I think we agree on this. Uh, well, I mean, we could go kind of deep on this. Scaling a property management business is very difficult. That just the reality, and that's what we're seeing in the marketplace. That is highly fragmented industry. There's a reason for it. It's just extremely difficult to scale beyond 2,000 doors. Very few people do it. Most of them do it through acquisitions and whatever. Nobody's cracked the code on how to do that without a lot of acquisitions, except for a few notable operators, including some turnkey operators, which I think is a fantastic business model and something we should kind of go deep on in one of our discussions. Okay, so backing up, there is a point of saturation, I believe, for most property management brands where pouring additional resources into growing door count is a diminishing return at that point. And so whether you're at that point or not, and whether you should really build out your wealth program or not, that's an individual decision. But I believe that there is significant gains to be had, even if I would argue, even if a relatively small number, and I'm talking as little as 5 or 10%, of owners intentionally engage in a wealth builder program. And here's why. One of the reasons why. You were not on the webinar this morning.
I had stuff to do, bro.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not important enough. It's all about you and how good you look.
I'll watch it though, because I like Andrew Smallwood.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Thank you. A backhand there. Um, so you know how there's a car on the stand at the dealership and it's like a Corvette and it's super shiny. It's like, wow, that's a really cool car. There's something I think that's referred to, I believe it's called the halo effect. And when you have something really nice that's part of your business, some people even advocate for having, like, maybe you have a gold and a platinum plan. You should have an uber platinum plan, like something that's ridiculous that almost nobody would buy, but it actually raises the profile of your brand, the perception of the value of their brand, that you have that option, right? And so I think a wealth builder program and this asset management level services, where I agree with you is I think it should be built out as its own thing. I think there's too many variables, and our property managers are wearing too many hats already, and the transition from one way of thinking to another is too difficult, that when you're in the fray, when you're in the day-to-day urgent stuff, it's just too difficult to flip a switch and be like, now I'm thinking like an asset manager. I think you can train some of that thinking. I think you can train property managers to notice when owners are really pissed off on a regular basis, and you say like, hey, wait, zoom out. Let's look at the blanket data. Like, where is your asset performance? Wow, you're in the bottom quartile on maintenance ratios. And by the way, my gut is telling me that it's a 40-year-old condo in downtown Phoenix with HOA rapidly increasing rates. Like, this is not, like, and you got this thing paid off. Hold on. I know why you're pissed. It's not me. It's not your tenants. Your capital's in the wrong asset. We need to zoom out and take it. I think you can teach that way of thinking, and I think it's important to talk about that enough. Just like was it you that told me? Oh no, somebody just told me today that At Chick-fil-A, they decided to, I know this sounds random, but they decided to, every time somebody says thank you, they say, my pleasure, you know? And if you want to mess with them, just go through the drive-through and be like, this is great, all right. And then they might say, they don't know what to say, you know? So I do that all the time. But the idea is that things take time. It took them 2 years at Chick-fil-A to fully integrate that one behavior, that one routine. Okay, so I'm not arguing that it's maybe difficult for property managers to think like asset managers and to like begin to see things differently and to start have those conversations. I'm not going to rule it out, but I think that if you're going to get really intentional about it, you should build a program around it, and you should have one person, maybe it's a virtual assistant, maybe it's your transaction agent, and this is part of their job, and they're kind of removed from the day-to-day hustle and bustle of property management, and they can look strategically and be like, wow, you're overspending on maintenance, you have some capital improvements coming up, you have filled out our questionnaire, and you've self-identified as somebody that's like super like frustrated when things aren't really stable. Yeah, we should actually harvest this capital, move it into a new build out in the suburbs, and get you set up for success. You know, that's what we need to do. But that requires intention, and you're right, there's a few additional variables. But the payoff can be huge, Tony. Like if you transact 10 more properties a year, you know, because you're thinking like this and you have this maybe dedicated person or whatever, that's over 100 grand in revenue. So that pays for that department on its own, right?
When you say transact, you were talking about assisting with the purchase of that
That's right.
transaction.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So now we've introduced additional variables of you have to make sure that you've got a sales team that is doing brokerage business, and some property management companies have that, some don't. If you already do have it, that's great. Now you're feeding those leads to one of your agents that's then taking that $50,000 in additional revenue, and they're going to want some, I'm sorry, $100,000 you mentioned, and they're going to want some split, some percentage. So I'm going to
Right.
say 50%. They're going to take 50% of that. So now you're doing all of this
Well,
extra
let's say they
work.
take all of it. Maybe they take all of it. Maybe 100,000 is your break even for that department. Yeah, but the goal is let's build beyond that. Like I think right now we're doing about 300. Like in a good year, we're doing like 400,000 in revenue from real estate commissions, and we're only 580 units. Like there's a lot of people doing a lot more than that. So I think that yeah, there's complexity there, but is it worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? I'm saying yes.
And I'm saying, you asked me earlier, you said at some point, trying to make a bigger impact, bigger penetration into a marketplace is becomes more and more difficult, that it doesn't pay off. We're taking a break here. Mark's in the bathroom.
You're,
And pouring a little liquid death in his cup there. So
You're saying greater market penetration is a better idea than like starting new fangled programs. Yeah, there's no one size fits all answer for that.
no, but I do like having this discussion because I get a lot of clients that will come to me, or potential clients, and they will talk about, I think I've kind of reached my market size here, and I think that if I just opened up shop, 50 miles down the road, I could have a second office and I could do some work down there, and I could have another office, and I could then grow my property management business by opening up a second location. And you and I have actually had that conversation where you express your desire to grow in multiple locations.
Yeah.
And my question to you would be, at what point, you mentioned market penetration, at what point do you have to be before you see that diminishing return in the market? And I think a lot of people, so you and I, let's just say for in this example, you and I both decide we've grown so big that we're not seeing the scale that we wanted, that we saw when we were younger, our company was younger, when we were growing a little faster. We're so big now that we have to add so many properties just to keep up with churn. So we start thinking, well, if I just opened up an office somewhere else, I could grow in that market. So I look at Phoenix and I say, you know what, Phoenix is a good market. I'll open up there. And you look at Denver and say, Denver's a good market. I'll open up there. You and I are just competing in a market that's already saturated according to that thinking of saturation. And so I always, when I'm working with my clients, is I'll tell them, look, let's actually look at the real situation. At some point, you may hit that penetration mark with the number of available rental properties to manage. But I don't think that you're even close to that, because the number of available rental properties in your marketplace is so large that you're going to have a bigger impact using your brand presence, your marketing presence, your current systems, your current vendors, and all of that in your existing market than trying to say, I'm going to pick up and I'm going to hang a new shingle and I'm going to go compete down in Phoenix with Mr. Mark Brower.
Yeah. Yeah. This we're shifting to this topic now, the market penetration topic.
Well, I thought you already conceded on the other one, no?
No, I guess they're related actually. When this is not a total shift because you're saying like, hey, when you've got extra time, which really is kind of funny because who has extra time in property management? When you're just sitting around twiddling your thumbs and with extra dollars, you're not sure what to do with. Are you going to go expand into a new market or are you going to build out your wealth builder program? And the answer is you're going to do both if both are right for you. And if you're asking the question, Mark Cunningham's one of the smartest people in our industry, and he says you have to have, I think, 5% penetration in your market, which I'm never going to get there in Phoenix. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's such a huge number.
Is that number accurate, that 5% that from his quote? Because I thought it was closer to like 10 or 12. It doesn't matter. It's still neither one of us are
Oh, good
close
question.
to that.
The way I got that, the way I got 5% was I searched and I asked ChatGPT, and then it gave me a peterlohman.com reference. So I'm assuming it's pulling that from that.
Okay.
Yeah, February 5th, 2024, nowhere near the 5% that Mark recommends. Yeah, so that's peterlohman.com.
Yeah. So the point is, I think a lot of people decide to expand. Everybody's looking for a way to grow their
Well,
business. And when they
yeah,
hit a roadblock here,
yeah,
it's the
that's it.
grass is greener type of thing.
Grass is greener, but guess what? I think it's because we don't really know what the primary constraint on residential property management is. Like seriously, like I'm puzzled by this, Tony. Why are there so many small operators? What is it about the fact that small operators solve the problem better than larger operators? And if the reason to that, if the answer to that question is something about just the market prefers like an immense variety of different brands in the marketplace, then heck, why not just go open up in 12 different markets and grow to 300 units and like figure out how to but that you're going to say, well, a lot of people would say, well, that's insanity. That's like, really? You're going to go learn 12 different markets, like operational procedures to be legally compliant and, to have local market knowledge and to understand the building stock in those markets and the maintenance needs. And, like there's some great arguments against doing that. But the question remains and begs to be asked, what is it about residential SFR third-party property management that meets the market need in a highly fragmented fashion? And can I postulate on this?
Postulate,
Can I postulate?
postulate away.
Okay, postulate away. I think one of the problems with this industry and the reason it's so difficult to scale is because the consumer base, the landlords, have such irrational expectations. And those of us that have been in it for a while know to decline working with I would say at least 50% of the owner types out there, maybe 30 to 50% that are just too irrational, too emotionally invested in the asset, too financially to be a good enough partner that we're willing to lend our services to them. And that might, if somebody's like listening to this and they're not in our industry, they'll be like, well, that sounds really arrogant. That sounds like, wow, I don't want to work with that guy. But hey, guess what? It's the reality. It is the truth. And if you talk to any property manager that's been in the business long enough, that's willing to be honest with you, they're going to tell you the same thing. So what does that mean? That means that we've got a bunch of startups that are willing to say yes to the things that those of us that have been around for a while are not going to say yes to. And that's meeting some of the market demand out there. So maybe that's one of the reasons why a highly fragmented bunch of property managers meets the market demand. I think there's other reasons though. I think that there's a very that the level of trust between landlord and property manager is so thin and so fragile that need perhaps is best met when it's done with that person that has enough chutzpah and grit as an entrepreneur does, and it has enough intelligence and enough initiative and enough whatever, like all those things about actually building a business, get translated into running this accidental landlord's business. And it's like a one-on-one, like that person didn't they're not building a property management business, by the way, in my opinion. They've created a job for themselves, and they see themselves as a business owner because they're self-employed, and that's fine. That's great. It's part of the American dream, right? But that they're their own bottleneck, right? Because as they can't possibly hire people with the commitments they've made to their clients at the level of service that they've promised to deliver. They can't possibly hire people at a reasonable enough wage that gives them enough margin that allows them to really turn over those responsibilities. That's a very difficult problem to solve, and a lot of us have solved it. When you get up past 2, 3, 500 units, you have to solve that problem. But you also have to start lowering the level of promises you're making to clients because you have to standardize everything. And so then that just leaves a little chunk of the market unserved by you that goes and finds the chump that just barely hung out their shingle and hasn't learned those painful lessons again. And the cycle repeats. You think I'm onto something?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's exactly one of the things that, while you were talking, it made me think, have you ever been to Disneyland or Disney World?
I have never been to. Of course, I've been to Disneyland.
Okay, well, I mean, there's 3 or 4 people that are listening, and out of one of those, I'm
I
sure
have
they
four
haven't been.
kids. I've been to Disneyland.
Yeah. Okay, so when you were explaining this, I was kind of thinking like the princesses and the people that are in the parade and the people that wear the Mickey suits and the Minnie Mouse suit and
Land in
walking
the
around.
parades. Yep.
But yeah, so that's the fun stuff. That's the interaction. That's where people are like, I want to work with them. I want to be around them because they seem fun and interactive, and but yet it couldn't go on without the people behind the scenes. And so when I'm trying to put this in a way that I can explain it, when you are first working with somebody that's just in property management, they're a solo entrepreneur and they are desperate to get business, you're working directly with the front of the house, the talent, the people that are willing to answer questions directly for you. And you could ask them, hey, can we meet at my property on Saturday at 3:30 because that's when I want to meet because that's when I'm available. And the person that is just that new person, they're like, yeah, I'll do it. Let's 3:30 on a Saturday. And then you're going to call me at 3:15 and tell me you're running late, but we're really going to meet at 5, and I'm still going to do it because I'm desperate for the business. I'm serving that person in a one-on-one context. And so now I'm I have a relationship with that client. That client has a relationship with me. And now all of a sudden I've built this system around me as the operator.
Exactly.
That doesn't scale. And so when you start to scale and you start to put in systems, and if you have a little bit of experience in the business, you start to say, you know what? Back to the Disneyland thing, I can't just have the parade go off at 2:30 and then again at 4 because that's what you want. We have a scheduled time that the parade goes down Main Street. And you're welcome to come and sit and watch and buy your ice cream and get your balloon and sit on the curb and watch the parade go, but it's going to go according to my system because I have learned over time that this is the best way to run this business. And it's the same thing with people as we grow. And so as we grow, it becomes less about us as the business owner and more about the systems and teams that we put in place. Some people who have never been managed before, who have a property, they don't know what to expect. And so they have their own assumptions. And unfortunately, the people who are just getting into the business, who have a smaller portfolio or are in that one-on-one service without having a team, they're willing to accommodate the demands or the requests of each individual person. And I remember when I first got started, this is 25 years ago, I used to run and actually deposit checks in my clients' bank accounts. And when we had 30 doors or whatever, I'm like, yeah, whatever it takes to get that 31st door, I'll run and deposit that check. You can't do that now that you scale. And some people are not going to be happy with you taking things away and systematizing that. But other people are going to be happy that you have a system and they're turning these things over to you. So I would argue the fact that somebody wants to work one-on-one with a property manager with their small doesn't prohibit them from being able to grow into a property management company owner that has a team that works for them underneath them. But it has to be about setting those expectations and properly setting them and then actually meeting them and conveying them along the way, not just, well, we have our new expectations and that's just it.
You are paying me to manage you and your property. There's a big problem with that. Most owners don't feel they need management.
Yeah. And that's why most owners, go and find the onesie twosie small companies. But those companies, as they grow, they will eventually figure out I'm burnt out because I'm providing exceptions and I'm doing all of these different things for all of these different owners. And that's why if you can put as many people in the same pipe as possible, you can get really good at it without having to go and create all of these different systems and all of these different what ifs and different options for different people.
You know why property management is hard to scale?
What's ChatGPT say about that?
No, I'm typing a LinkedIn post. This is like fascinating, so I'm going to post about this. The reason property management is difficult to scale is because of low barriers to entry. That's an economic term that means it's too easy to get into the business. So let me outline my logic here. Whereas you ever remember in legal contracts, how they have like all these whereas, therefore. Okay, here's one of those. Whereas there are low barriers of entry to get into residential property management, and whereas there's a tremendous desire to pursue the American dream and be self employed or have a business, and whereas the current real estate market kind of sucks for a lot of transaction agents, and whereas property management is generally a thankless job, and whereas several other conditions, therefore it attracts entry into the industry by a large volume of new providers all the time. And those large providers, in an effort to clear the bar to be able to make a living, foolishly say yes to things they're later going to regret. And that messes up the market for the rest of us.
So
Because if landlords didn't have the option of somebody saying yes to their irrational demands, they would be relegated to the services that remain, or they'd have to self-manage, right? And then that would maybe make it a little bit more viable to scale a property management business. But the fact that it's so easy to get in and so tempting to say yes to stuff that we don't understand how it's going to blow up on us later, because we don't learn that for like the first 3 to 5 years of being in property management. Some people never learn it. That's what messes up the market. That's what makes it so difficult to scale, among other things.
I would argue that it's not just that. I mean, that is definitely a piece of it, but also what makes it difficult to scale is that mindset of the owner that was able to, the property management company owner, who was able to break free from that, getting to 30 doors and doing all of these one-offs and saying yes to all of these stupid things that we shouldn't say yes to, that you just learn over time. Well, that was a bad idea. I'm not going to do that again. And that was a bad idea. I'm not going to do that again. And all of a sudden you start to create some systems, and the ones that do create systems and break out of that, they become really good at what they do. Some people don't. Some people stay stuck in that, 30, 40 doors and just are doing these one-offs for everybody. But the people who break free from that one-off and create these systems, they create these systems that they know how to run. So now all of a sudden they have become the most important person in the room, and they're like, I got to get help. But then they bring on somebody, but because everything has been built around them from the beginning, they don't have time to stop and train that one first person. So they hire somebody, check the box, don't train them, and then they're disappointed that they hired this person and had to fire them because, well, that person just didn't work out. Well, it's not that person didn't work out. You didn't give them the system that it takes. You didn't properly equip them to go into battle. You didn't train them on that system, and then you're coming after them for their poor performance. And so we've got to help people break free from that. I got free from the run around like a chicken with my head cut off to running a business successfully on my own to now I'm no longer a property manager. I'm a property management entrepreneur that owns a company that services clients through property management. And that's the sweet spot that I've been working in lately, is taking people who have become pretty good in this business, but now need to step away from being the person that does everything, the smartest person in the room, and creating a room where they are not the genius with a bunch of assistants, but they are the conductor of the orchestra. They are the ones standing in front of all of these experts and letting them know this is the music that we're going to create together.
Yeah. Preach.
Yep. I was on my soapbox and you just, yep.
Sounds good.
Yeah, well, I
Put a
guess that's a
stamp
wrap
on it.
then. That's a wrap. Let's
That's a wrap. All right.
I guess. I mean, that's I kind of hit a dead end there, I thought.
All right.
All
Good.
right. Okay. I do want to circle back around and maybe next episode talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, let's do that. That is
So,
so cool. He's holding up the Grand Canyon coin. All right. Peace out, homie. Let's do another episode soon.
okay, this is a very short section of the trail, so we're going to see you again in about 5 miles. Get out of here. Get out of the aid station. Let's go. We'll see you in a few minutes.
You've got this. All right.